Tell Thetis that when it's time to attack, when you need someone for the actual fight, I'll be there.
Count on it.
We are here talking Season 2, Part 2, Episode 6 of... We pick up after last week's cliffhanger right as King Lizard has a gun to Rex's head. Now I didn't think he would do it, but bang, he actually pulls the trigger and shoots Rex right in the head as Rex falls and lays in his own blood. A mind-blowing way to kick off this incredible episode. Now back in space, the Guardians must protect Rudy after Eve wasn't able to hold on to her protective shield, as we watch each Guardian digs deep to protect them as well as defending their own safety. Now, as it seems there is no way to defeat this hive mind, we see Rudy is about to get engulfed by them, but in the last minute, Shapesmith pulls his own protective shield against the squids to cover Rudy as he completes the suit bomb. Now, this to me was the moment that Shapesmith officially gained their trust and became a Guardian. Now, Eve wakes up just as Rudy bomb is ready, as someone needs to take this directly to the hive mind to stop them, as Immortal immediately takes the lead but is stopped by Invincible as he tells him,
"How dare you!
Stop it! I'm stronger and faster than you, and you know it!"
Don't fail."
Now, Immortal is tasked with covering Invincible as the others continue to fight, but Shapesmith can't hold any longer, leaving Eve to fend for Rudy alone, as we see some of the squids manage to sneak into her new shield. Now, as Invincible gets closer, he's stopped, but Immortal helps and he's able to set off the bomb to distract his nerve system, and they're able to save Russ, but they turn around to find that Rudy and Eve are now hosts. Now, Invincible suggests that maybe there's some juice left to save them, as they separate them and set off the bomb again, and it works and they're able to rescue them, and they have to leave immediately. Now back at the missile station, King Lizard makes his demands on the phone but notices a noise coming from Rex's body as he notices he's still alive. Impressed by Rex's strength to survive, he begins mocking him as Rex just wants him to shut up. And some way, somehow, Rex uses all his power and anger and begins to beat the hell out of King Lizard and holds him up with his good hand and bashes his face in with the bone left on his eaten off hand and throws him on the ground and begins stomping him to death. As the guards enter the room, they ask if Rex is okay, and after the adrenaline has slowed down, we see Rex passes out and taken into recovery, but not before he answers by saying,
Why would you... That's a weird question. I'm fine. Totally good. Ever better? You know me. I'm practically...
Now I assume he killed King Lizard, but I'm not 100% sure, but either way, that was one of the most brutal and straight up badass moments so far in this show. As for me, this moment of the episode and seeing Rex in action last week has completely changed my perspective on Rex. This dude's arc from being a douchebag turned badass has been great. But this incredible scene isn't over yet, as one of the guards looks over Komodo Dragon's dead body, and surprise, Shrinking Ray is still alive. Now back with the Guardians in space, as they find their way to escape, they're stopped by some high-ranking Martians who tell them that they can leave, but Shapesmith must stay to face his crimes of punishment, and that being death. Now, like any great team, no man is left behind. We watch the Guardians disobey their orders and they fly off. Now, being chased by them, we see Invincible ultimately pulls a Captain Marvel and flies through each ship and destroys them one by one. Now after seeing this, Invincible is immediately congratulated and hugged by Eve, and you'll notice the response by Invincible, it being one that possibly having a romantic connection with her, something that was hinted at back in Season 1 but never was pursued because both characters were involved with other relationships. Now I think for Mark, Amber hasn't really seen him in action and he's never really had someone notice his heroic actions before like this. But after this episode, it's safe to assume that their friendship may be becoming something more. Now it is important to point out that Immortal acknowledged the actions from Invincible, and at the same time we see Rudy is proud that he was able to control his fear response and changed himself, and as he says he can do the same for Monster Girl, but she tells him to stop. This relationship between Rudy and Monster Girl shouldn't be overlooked. The buildup has been slow, but I have a feeling that it will have a very great glorious payoff. Now to backtrack a bit, the opening 10 minutes of this episode was nothing short of amazing and thrilling and just incredible. one of my favorite openings of this entire series so far. We check in with Debbie and Mark's little brother as Cecil is paying them a visit to let them know that the Guardians successfully completed their mission, but he's also continuing to try to convince her to let him and the GDA take over and let him take care of the little guy. As Debbie reminds him that she raised Mark and look how he turned out, a superhero who saved the world, so he's in good hands. She also brings up the fact that he's Mark's only brother and he's important to him, but also to her because he's family. Now comment below, do you all trust Cecil's intentions? Does he honestly want the best for Debbie and, as he's named later, Oliver? Or does he just want to take Oliver to train him early and to be one of his pawns or a contingency plan against any threats on Earth, including Nolan and the Viltrumites? Now at the Pentagon, we see Russ is under their care, and as the morale of the group is up, Eve, Mark, and Black Samsung see Donald sitting there and he looks upset. As they learn what happened with the rest of the Guardians while they were gone, we see Shrinking Ray and Rex are recovering after their surgery, as Immortal is sitting in a dark room with all of Kate's dead bodies as he mourns her. Now I mentioned it last week how I didn't really have the emotional impact of their deaths because we didn't spend that much time with those characters, but seeing these characters who care for them and knowing they spend time with them and how they've built a bond and honestly they've built a family, their reactions and seeing what happened hit me more than last week's scenes. This scene to me was a great way to create the emotional depth in my opinion. As Mark arrives home and is greeted by his little brother Oliver, who names comes from Debbie's dad, Oliver is now using words and calls Mark his brother. At the funeral, Immortal speaks of Kate's real superpowers, and it was to help those around her and that she always believed that it was good in this world no matter how many times she died trying to save it. This was something that Immortal learned from Kate. A person who's lived centuries was able to learn something from this person who he connected with more than anyone he's ever met before, as he thought.
I thought we had more time together.
I gotta admit, I like that we get to see more layers of Immortal and seeing our heroes' day-to-day lives and them dealing with loss and seeing the different emotions of what makes them mad, happy, or sad is what makes this show so special. Now, I don't want to glance over this, but most of the second half of this episode focuses on Mark and Amber and both of them acknowledging that the past year or so hasn't been the best and their time at college isn't what they hoped for. They're realizing that Mark's superhero lifestyle is creating a rift between them. As we see Amber goes to talk to Eve for advice about Mark, as Mark gets relationship advice from both Ark and Rex. I really thought that cutting between the two conversations was very creative, and seeing them answering each other's questions through the other person was very effective. Now speaking of Rex, he talks to Mark about how terrible he was in his past relationships, and he seems to want to turn a new leaf after coming so close to death. But back to Amber and Mark, it seems that they both are realizing that maybe their time as a couple has run its course. Now, if they do inevitably end things, I don't think it's going to be on bad terms, but maybe a decision that they both came to agree with, or in perfect superhero fashion, maybe Amber dies, really opening up that door for him and Eve to actually be together. Now, speaking of complex relationships, we see that Rick is back and William couldn't be happier. Now, it's safe to assume that Rick is a cyborg just like Donald, who, by the way, is still dealing with what he found out last week, and he even mentions how this type of trauma can resurface. I am so intrigued to see if anything goes wrong with this state-of-the-art cyborgs. Meanwhile, Debbie interviews potential babysitters who are spies sent by Cecil, but finds one of them by the name of April, who tells Debbie the truth about her working for the GDA, but reminds Debbie that she's the boss, not Cecil. As we see, Oliver is now calling her mom. Now again, can we trust Cecil? Can we now trust April? Once she maybe gains Debbie's trust, will she make her move to take him straight to Cecil and have him training him, all while she's supposed to be babysitting him? Now speaking of Cecil, we see he offers Eve a spot back on the Guardians, but she's still not ready to rejoin them quite yet, as she's still figuring out what kind of hero she wants to be. Now while talking to Art, we see Mark gets his father's sci-fi books. As he reads them over, we get to experience them. We meet who goes by the name of Space Rider in the books, as he's got a very powerful weapon called the Infinity Ray. Now, Speed Racer in the comics was first introduced in issue 35. As we learn in this episode, Speed Racer has an extremely powerful gun that, when fired, has an indestructible blast that can shoot through anything and can also only be shot by him. Now, these blasts are lethal to Viltrumites. Now, Mark also reads Savage Planet savage beasts, which is also very key because the Ragnars are extremely powerful and strong, and their planet increases their strength. Now, this was also included in issue 35 as well, as Mark is starting to realize his father's books may be hiding a secret message. Back at the Guardians headquarters, Cecil tries to get Immortal to take a vacation, but he refuses as they see an unknown object is heading towards Earth, as Immortal takes action because he believes it's Omni-Man. We cut to space and see that it's Alan looking for Mark, but he's greeted by an angry Immortal looking for a fight. Alan tries to avoid this fight, but Immortal won't stop until Invincible steps in and stops it from getting violent. Now, Invincible inevitably convinces Immortal that Alan is a good guy as they talk about why Alan is here on Earth. Now, in Mark's dorm room, Alan tells him about Theta's true identity as Mark fills him in on what happened to his dad. Now, in this conversation, Mark also notices how much bigger Alan has gotten since he last saw him, as Alan eventually gets to why he's here on Earth as he invites Mark to go to space to discuss their war plans against the Viltrumites. But Mark refuses as he tells him that he just got back from space and he needs to spend some time on Earth to make things right with Amber, but also he wants to be there for his little brother Oliver. Now, while he doesn't go with Alan, he doesn't leave him empty-handed, as he tells him that his father's books are detailed with clues and information on how to hurt the Viltrumites, and Alan scans them and takes this information back with him to share with Thetis. Now, I would imagine that Thetis and the other Viltrumites are already aware of their vulnerabilities or their weaknesses, but maybe over time they become so powerful and resilient they stop passing down how they can get hurt to future generations because they couldn't imagine ever losing or one of their own using their weaknesses against them. As Alan leaves, Mark tells him,
"When you need someone for the actual fight, I'll be there."
As we end this episode, we see this prison in space housing what I assume to be some dangerous individuals, and one of them look like battle beasts who I can't wait to make their return, but we see one of them is Nolan. Now the question is, why is Nolan still alive? As we hear General, who goes by General Craig in the comics but goes by General Krieg in the show, he explains their ways.
In order for a Viltrumite to be executed, he must be healed and whole, worthy to stand and face the end of his life with honor, even if his crime was devoid of it. Yet for even such a craven betrayal, there is a path to redemption.
We see Nolan gets offered to rejoin his people, but doesn't respond. Now this obviously upsets the General as he says,
The planet and its people are toxic if they could do this to you. They too will pay.
Will we inevitably see Nolan fight back and try to escape? As we end this episode back on Earth with Russ cleaning his apartment as he begins choking as he spits up a squid and it reattaches itself to him and reconnects the bond as their plan to invade Earth is back on. Our post-credit scenes show Angstrom getting fitted for a new suit as he's prepared to visit an old friend. As we watch him walking through the different multiverses, one of them is a reference to the creator's Robert Kirkman's most popular universe in The Walking Dead as he arrives and says,
It is good to be home.
Now the question I have is, who's this old friend that he's visiting? Has he found an Invincible in the multiverse that can help him defeat our Invincible? I can't wait to find out, but overall, as far as this episode go, I thought that this was an excellent episode of Invincible. I love how they immediately addressed both cliffhangers from last week, and it was almost just as brutal seeing Rex snap, having Invincible gaining respect of Immortal, having Rudy getting better, we have Shapesmith holding his own, all great character moments. Now, even though all the action happened in the first 10 minutes of this episode, the aftermath was just as impressive. Seeing the reaction from Immortal after Kate's death, Rex changing his old ways, the complicated relationships between the love triangle happening between Amber, Mark, and Eve, even getting Rick back and seeing where that goes, all while Donald may be prepared to snap. We had Debbie being a stepmom to Oliver and the lack of trust I have in the new babysitter April. This was just such a layered episode about seeing characters questioning relationships, starting new relationships, and setting the stage for bad things to come, including Angstrom, the squids, and the very important discovery of Nolan's books and seeing what will come of him in both prisons. The physical one he's held in and the one that he has going on in his own head. This will end my recap and breakdown of episode 6. If you're interested in seeing my live reactions to watching that incredible opening sequence, Rex versus King Lizard, the Guardians defeating the Squid, the ending and the post-credit scene, you can find those reactions in the description of this very video. I want to thank you all for watching. I really would appreciate it if you could hit that like button, share your opinions, your theories, and everything you took away from this episode in the comments below, but also consider sharing this video and also consider sticking around by subscribing to the channel. You all are awesome, stay safe, and I'll catch you all in the next video.